are in Proverbs chapter 15. Last week we looked at verse 4 and then we played a bit, what I call a game, is what we played. And you may have, not think of it as such, but it was starting with one verse and then looking at all the connections that could be made from that one verse. Not just by way of identical subject or theme, but that of going from one to another to another to another, of the theme actually changing a bit. And I discovered years ago, actually, that it was very difficult to gather Proverbs together in a nice and neat order for particular subjects. Now, some do it, but they have to have some kind of parameter of where they're not going to go off that subject too far, but just keep it to one subject. But I noticed that there are too many too many proverbs of where it speaks of more than one thing, and then you're off to something else, and then from that one to something else. But it's all the way it teaches. It teaches from multiple angles. Now, we're just going to continue in chapter 15 today. We just did that last week as an illustration to show how it can be done. And it's easily done. We could, as you're saying, we could do that for the rest of the year if we wanted to, and there would still be more. But we're in verse 5, so chapter 15 and verse 5. And this is absolute response to, we can think of it like this. Proverbs 1:8, my son, hear the instruction of your father and do not forsake the law of your mother. Verse 5, 15:5, a fool despises his father's instruction. It's like these two, this should follow right behind the other one. Well, it is, it's just considerably further down. But do not, my son, hear the instruction of your father. Well, a fool despises his father's instruction, but he who receives correction is prudent. All right, now the construction of this is just switched around from chapter 12, verse 1. Whoever loves instruction loves knowledge, but he who hates correction is stupid. So we have in 15:5, the last word is prudent because there's one that receives correction. The last word in 12, verse 1 is stupid because that's the one that hates correction. All of these go together. All of these go looking at one side of it and then flipping the coin and looking at the other side of it. Restating the same thing in essence, but showing it from different angles. Now, you have 13 and verse 1, if we go there. A wise son heeds his father's instruction. That also would go with chapter 1, verse 8. That listen to the instruction of your father, take the instruction of your father. A wise son heeds his father's instruction, but a scoffer does not listen to rebuke. So we put all this together and we see that the fool, and we see that of the scoffer, and we see the one who hates instruction is stupid. Now, we talked about that word stupid and what that meant back a number of weeks ago. And that is someone who just is almost like an animal, almost, in that they just can't be taught because they don't want to be taught. It's that simple. They could be. They're not, without some kind of means of taking in instruction and following the instruction. Probably they're very, very good at it when it comes to secular things, when it comes to a matter of their job and things that they think matter a whole lot. But when it comes to moral behavior, that doesn't matter so much to them. So they're just going to reject it. And in doing so, they are refusing instruction. and they're not prudent, and they are foolish in doing so. And we could go to other verses in all this. We can go to verse 12, just a little bit further down, 15 and verse 12. A scoffer does not love one who corrects him, nor will he go to the wise. All right, it's just from a different direction, but and continues in this teaching. Now we go to verse 6. So 15 verse 6. In the house of the righteous there is much treasure, but in the revenue of the wicked is trouble. Now, we want to look at this for a second, because every now and then we come across a proverb that is, one could think and we've talked about it before, of the health and the wealth gospels, that if I'm obedient to God, nothing bad will ever happen to me. You may have found somebody like that. And I had this argument with a fellow years ago, that it went down to, if you were a truly obedient to God, it wouldn't rain on you. If you were truly obedient to God, you'd get the best parking space. It would just be there waiting for you. And I'm not exaggerating. This is true, and it's absurd. Have you never read concerning the life of Christ? Have you never read concerning the life of the apostles? Do you think they always got the best parking space? I'm being absurd because the whole thing is absurd. All right? And that is not what's being taught here. It is not. Now, somebody can take it out and try to misapply it, try to make it say that, but it's not saying that. In the house of the righteous there is much treasure. Well, that would be wisdom and goodness and peace and life. Are those treasures? Now, to the fool would say, well, he likes the life bit, but the rest not so much. Okay. But here is the treasure that is found there. Now, if we go down to verse 16, better is a little with the fear of the Lord than great treasure with trouble. In verse 17, better is a dinner of herbs where love is than a fatted calf with hatred. So in the house of the righteous, there may not be a whole lot of physical or material wealth. It may not be there. But what about the fear of the Lord? Is that a treasure? Is that a treasure that continues to give and give and give? Yes. What about that of love? Is love a treasure? We're not on these verses just yet, but we can just go ahead and speak about them a little bit. Is that, what good is luxury in the house of hatred? What good is it? You've got the fatted calf with hatred, where people there hate you? All right, that's no good. That's no good at all. And there are situations where you have someone like a king. He's in the lap of luxury. All right, he's got the feast with the fatted calf and everything else, but he can't trust anybody in the room. He can't trust anybody. Any one of them may want him dead. Any one of them, those that are his closest relations, may want the throne taken away from him. So he's got to have, even with that fatted calf, he's got to have taste testers to go in and, depending on the king, I would not want that job. And I saw something here a couple of years ago. It was actually like one of these taste testers writing some things down. That's how it's even known about. That there was a group of them that were for a particular leader, and who had very good cause to believe somebody would poison him. And this group of taste testers, they lived in fear of their next meal. Because while you might look forward to lunch, they wouldn't be. because it could be their last. Well, there's your hatred. There's your house of hatred. And what good is that fatted calf? What good is any of it if you can't trust anybody? There is no love present. Is that not treasure? Having love, is that not treasure? Having trust in the people who are around you, is that not a treasure? Having goodness in your own house. And so we just come back to verse 6. In the house of the righteous there is much treasure, but the revenue of the wicked is trouble. That's the currency. You can think of it. That trouble is the currency of wickedness. That's what you get paid with. Well, you're creating the trouble, and here it's coming back upon you. And we could look at Proverbs 14:24, the crown of the wise, and the folly of the fool. That the fool gains folly, and that crown of the wise, let's just go there. The crown of the wise is their riches. Now, that would be wisdom and goodness and righteousness and love and faithfulness. It's all there. And virtue, every virtue is there. That is a crown. But the foolishness of fools is folly. That's the payment. That's where you're headed. What did you think was going to be happening? You have someone that goes out and picks apples. What do you think they're going to get? Apples. Someone goes out to pick poison ivy. What do you think they're going to get? Poison ivy and everything that goes with it. All right, there's a consequence for what you do. There's a consequence for your actions. And there's this revenue of the wicked that it's just and it is trouble. That's what you gain by it. Now we go to verse 7, which really it goes very well with verse 4, which we looked at last week. But the lips of the wise disperse knowledge, but the heart of the fool does not do so. The wise, we talked about this earlier. If you want to know, get an insight into the wisdom of Solomon, with everything that we've been told about his wisdom, everything we've been told concerning his abilities in discernment, his abilities to judge a situation. If you want an insight into his wisdom, here it is. It's in Proverbs. You can get it here. Now you can also get it in the places like 2 Kings as well, and in other statements that may be made about him. But here is the wisdom of the wise, and the lips of the wise disperse knowledge. Yeah, the wise can teach like Solomon. It's given to us. Now, what we have here is inspired. So it could be that there are some things that Solomon said, that were not as wise as what we have here. And yeah, there was a point in his life where he wasn't so wise at all. He was slipping and going. He had been playing with fire, and it's one of those should have known better. Could have known, did know better. Yeah, it did know better. Just kept it up. All right, and it became a problem, and it became a problem to the point of where God said He was going to split the kingdom. That Rehoboam was not going to be ruling a united Israel. Nope. After Solomon's death, it's going to be split, and it was, and it would have an effect on the future of that nation, which would now be two nations, with Israel, the northern kingdom, and Judah, the southern kingdom. And now, with this, the lips of the wise disperse knowledge. This is how the wise are a tree of life. That's verse 4. Okay. A wholesome tongue is a tree of life. Now, the heart of the fool does not do so. We can go to 18 and verse 1, that a fool is going to rage against all wise judgment. Let's just go there quickly to... wait a minute. Whew, my notes are thick. Did I say 18 and 1? Okay. Yeah, a man who isolates himself seeks his own desire. He rages against all wise judgment. He rages against all of that. And so here you have the heart of the fool does not do so. It's not gonna be like that. And 29 and verse 9, we go there, and we have these words: if a wise man contends with a foolish man, whether the fool rages or laughs, there is no peace. Yeah, whatever the reaction is, the fool who's remaining a fool doesn't accept the wisdom. It doesn't matter what he does, whether he flies off into a rage or whether he mocks it, whether he laughs, there is no peace here. But the heart of the fool does not do so. That's is not going to be dispersing knowledge. Now, 15 and verse 8. The sacrifice of the wicked is an abomination to the Lord, but the prayer of the upright is His delight. All right? You cannot fool God. We start off with that one. You cannot live a life however you please in every sort of wickedness, every sort of foolishness, every sort of morally despicable sort of behavior, and then think that God is going to accept you simply because you're doing one little task, and then continue to do what you've always been doing. All right, that you're doing lip service, or you're doing a few things that you've been called to do, but you haven't changed your life at all. That you can live however you please, in whatever manner you want, and that He's going to accept you regardless. He's got to accept your sacrifice. He's got to accept you for doing this simply because, why? Why does He have to accept it? Why does He have to accept it? It's like, you've read about men or heard about men who in their younger years had run roughshod over everybody and made millions or billions or whatever. And then later in their life, they began to give and do these benevolent things now at the end of their life. All right. Now, does that cover everything that they did beforehand? Well, if you could pay your way into heaven, well, then there'd be a lot who could do it. All right, but you can't pay your way into heaven. Nor are you going to fool God into thinking that just because you went to the temple and you did the sacrifice, that He's got to accept that sacrifice. Or, put in our day, that you went to church on Sunday morning and you participated with everything, with all matters of worship on Sunday morning, but you do whatever you want outside the building, that somehow it all kind of draws out even. It doesn't. The sacrifice of the wicked is an abomination to the Lord. We can look at, and every now and then we do, 1 Corinthians 11:17, Paul speaks of the Corinthians saying, you come together not for the better, but for the worse. You're getting together, you're getting together on the first day of the week, or that's what you're supposed to do, but you're not worshiping God, and there is sin that's being protected there. You've got envy, strife, and division going on in there. You've got the beginnings of denominationalism and dividing themselves up. That's going on in there. You have lawsuits that are happening. You have all these things occurring, and he says, you'd be better off if you didn't come together. You'd be better off. Now it comes down to this. The sacrifice of the wicked is an abomination to the Lord. Now we can go to verse 9, the next verse down. The way of the wicked is an abomination to the Lord, but he loves him who follows righteousness. Now, nothing wicked is accepted by God. Nothing wicked. Now, we talked about the men who just did whatever they wanted to do earlier in their life. They get later in life and they become very, very generous. Now, while that would be seen as an act of good, it's not enough. And someone who thinks that, matter of fact, it comes up to nothing, as a matter of fact, but it is a good act. But someone who thinks that because of the sins of my past that I can simply pay my way out of it, you can't. Or sacrifice my way out of it, you can't. There's what is known as a repentant heart. That's necessary. A repentant heart, a turning away. Because what good is it for God to just allow us to be as wicked as we want to be? What good, what value does he give? It would be nothing. If He didn't give any wisdom, if He didn't give us any kind of instruction as to how we should be living our life, we are just left blind, but with and off to our own devices, with perhaps Him giving salvation regardless of all that. He provides a better way. And He wants obedience from the heart. He doesn't delight in sacrifices. He wants mercy and love. Those are greater than sacrifice could be. But here we have, if we go to Proverbs 21:27, the sacrifice of the wicked is an abomination. How much more when they bring it with wicked intent? Which may very well be. They bring it with wicked intent. But it doesn't matter. The sacrifice of the wicked is always an abomination to the Lord. And we just need to define wicked. What does it mean to be wicked? Of disregarding moral behavior, righteousness that God demands out of all of us. Someone that's not going to live conscientiously, someone that's just going to behave however they want. If they need to lie today, they lie. If they need to kill today, well, they'll certainly think about it, and if they can do it, they'll do it. And it's the whole thing of because I did it because I could do it. All right, that's a wicked person. That's a wicked person who would say that. That I did it simply because I could do it. When it comes to sin, that is definitely that's hardly any kind of excuse. It's certainly explaining things. But in Jeremiah chapter 14:11, we see these words. Then the Lord said to me, do not pray for this people for their good. When they fast, I will not hear their cry. And when they offer burnt offerings and grain offerings, I will not accept them. But I will consume them by the sword, by the famine, and by the pestilence. That concerned Jerusalem and Judah. Their wickedness had gone so far that, and they continued to sacrifice. I mean, there was the temple. They continued to make sacrifices to Jehovah. They still had a Levitical priesthood. They had gone way beyond that. But there it was. And He says He's not going to accept their sacrifice. Any sacrifice they accept, that they give, He's not going to accept it. He's not going to do it at all. And He tells Jeremiah, don't even pray for their good. Don't even do it. Don't expect me to answer that with the positive. Because He's not going to. And we do have this at the end of this proverb, but the prayer of the upright is his delight. He didn't say, Jeremiah, don't you pray ever because I won't accept it. He's just saying, concerning this subject, no. Concerning this subject. But James 5 and 6, the effective fervent prayer of a righteous man avails much. Yes. But putting things into proper perspective, there, even with a righteous man is not going to be asking for something unrighteous that God just forbids. A righteous man is not going to pray for something he shouldn't be praying for or praying to. All right, because that's all part of being righteous. That's all part of it. Praying to saints, or praying to the dead, or praying to some river god or whatever it is, that avails nothing, and that's not the prayer of a righteous man. That's not. But someone who is faithful to God and is praying to Him, this fervent prayer of a righteous man avails much. Now we go to 9 again. The way of the wicked is an abomination to the Lord, but He loves him who follows righteousness. Yes. His desire is that of righteousness. And as we said, there is nothing in wickedness that God doesn't hate, and He will not accept. There's nothing in wickedness acceptable to God. Everything in righteousness is acceptable to Him. So we go to verse 10. Harsh discipline is for him who forsakes the way, and he who hates correction will die. So this is similar to where we started this morning. A fool despises his father's instruction. All right. The way of the wicked, a harsh discipline is for him who forsakes the way, and he who hates correction will die. Here we see the result and the end result in all of this, that there is punishment due, whether one gets it in this life or not. Because we can look at some folks in our own day and say, it doesn't seem like this person was ever charged with anything. This person got away with murder. This person got away with an awful lot. And perhaps so when it comes to a human court. But when it comes to God's court, they're not going to get away with anything. You don't get away with anything. And everything will be judged by Christ. Everything. And here is the discipline is going to be for the one who forsakes the way. But what is discipline supposed to do? What is the idea? Correct. Yeah, it's to correct. Of come to your senses. This is where your actions have led. All right? This isn't a thing of just vengeance. We're doing this simply because we're being vindictive. The idea is to correct that person. That's the idea. That's what discipline is for, is so they come to some kind of sense that it's best not to do that. It would be best not to. And yes, fools, while they are foolish, they also can have some sense about them of knowing I can do this and try to get away with it. And if I get in trouble, the penalty's not that bad. Or I can go further, and if I get caught, the penalty is death. Okay, so I'm not going that far. Okay, and so I knew a man and he could speak frankly at times, and he said that he was a drug user, and the man couldn't go 3 weeks without someone looking over him. All right, he couldn't. He'd go about 2 weeks, and that was about it. He couldn't go 3 weeks without someone. If he was in jail, obviously he couldn't get drugs, but on his own he needed somebody watching him. But he just said, I'm accustomed. I know what it's like in jail, and I don't mind it. Well, the correction was doing nothing to him. Discipline was doing nothing to him. He's just biding his time until he can get back out and get back to what he wanted to do anyway. And so then some things are just going to be hard to overcome, but anything can be overcome with the help of God. Anything can be overcome. And there are some traps that have been set for us. Those are pretty powerful traps and can affect you the rest of your life. And things that may be very difficult to get out of and move forward. Let's look at verse 12 first. Because before we do 11, because verse 12 pairs in well with verse 10. A scoffer does not love one who corrects him, nor will he go to the wise. All right, in verse 10, well, he hates correction. He who hates correction will die. Scoffer does not love the one who corrects him, nor will he go to the wise, because the fool doesn't want to be offered anything other than foolishness. That's what he wants. He doesn't want to be offered anything he doesn't want to do. A fool is not going to go to the one who corrects, or will not go to the wise, because it's never what he wants to do, and it also confirms he's a fool. All right, it's kind of painful. So a fool is not going to go to the wise, because the wise is going to tell him to do what he and as Sunday, I think, we were talking about that of Ahab. Ahab did not want Micaiah. He didn't want him, who was a real prophet of Jehovah. He didn't want him because he has nothing good to say about me. Everything that came out of that prophet's mouth, so it would appear, was condemned Ahab for what he was doing. Well, Ahab doesn't want to be shown to be a fool, and Ahab doesn't want himself to follow what is wise. And of course, in that instance, 1 Kings 22, that in that instance, he's not going to do it. He can be told, you go and you die. He goes and he dies. He's been told the truth. He just doesn't like the truth. He doesn't like it at all, proving himself to be a fool all the way to the end. Absolutely all the way to the grave. Now, verse 11. Let me pause just a moment. There are certain proverbs that none of us have a whole lot of problem with. A problem as in not difficult to understand. We get it. All right? But remember what we were told from the beginning in all this. 1 in verse 6, to understand a proverb and an enigma, the words of the wise and their riddles. Some things are going to be more difficult than others, and some things open up subjects that you didn't see that one coming. Some of them open up things of where it takes more examination, and that this may very well be an enigma. This may very well be the words of the wise and their riddles. But that doesn't mean you cannot understand it, because the book says that's its purpose. That's what it's doing. And here is one, just doing a casual read, one may wonder, what was just said? All right, verse 11. So we're in chapter 15, verse 11. Hell and destruction are before the Lord. So how much more the hearts of the sons of men? This is a huge subject. This is something has been opened up here. First off, hell and destruction are before the Lord. All right, might I ask you, who created hell? God did. It wasn't Satan. Satan's not about to create the prison that's going to hold him. God created hell. All right, who is the one that brings about destruction? I mean, ultimately destroying all of creation. God's going to do it. It's not man. Man can't do it. Satan can't do it. It is God that's going to bring it to an end. God is going to roll all this up like an old cloak. And it's all going to be burned in an extraordinary heat to where the elements themselves melt. Everything is burned away. All right, so He's responsible for hell, and He knows everything's going to be destroyed, and that would also include not just final judgment with this material realm being done away with, but also we can see of destruction that has occurred upon this earth of where God was behind it. The flood of Noah's day, God was behind that. He purposed that. We can see the 185,000 Assyrian soldiers who died in one night. God was behind that. He purposed that. Of those that died in the wilderness. After you have the rebellion of Korah, you have the complaining that goes on, you have the sin that occurred at the base of Mount Sinai. There are those who died. Who brought that about? That was God brought that about. He knows that there is imprisonment and punishment, and it's eternal. Do you think He cannot see this? It's ever before Him. Just like we are. It is before Him. He very well knows where we're going to end up if we do wrong. And He knows how He designed it. He knows what it's intended to do and how it's going to hit the human soul in the beyond our experience on this earth in a tragic way. And there aren't words in human language to describe how that pain is, except by way of fire, because we experience what it means to burn. That's extremely painful. But it's eternal. Does this not concern Him? Because justice demands hell. Justice demands it. And He is righteous. Therefore, He is going to be just. But He's righteous. Therefore, He's also going to be merciful, but it's always on the terms of righteousness, of which He sets. He sets what that is. And that hell and destruction are before the Lord. It's absolutely certain. He created them. He sees them. He brings them. Absolutely certain. Now, we come to this next part. So how much more the hearts of the sons of men? This is both frightening, the first part of that, and comforting, the second part of this. That He knows about hell, but He also, and that's before Him, but how much more are the hearts of the sons of men? There is a reason why in Luke chapter 15, beginning in verse 4, I think it's 4 to 7, you have the parable of the sheep, and one goes astray. If there was no love for that sheep, if the shepherd didn't care that that sheep died in the wilderness, it was going to be just eaten by some animal coming along. If he had no concern for that, what was the point of going to go find him? All right? The shepherd knows more about what's in the wild and what waits for his sheep than the sheep do. All right, he's witnessed what wolves do. He knows what wolves can do. He knows whatever else there might be. Wild cats of some sort that's lurking. There are dangers out there aside from that of just dying from thirst or from starvation or however many ways a sheep may die. But in understanding, no one understands more concerning hell and destruction than God, and no one has a greater love for humanity than God. This is why the Christ came to this earth to die for us. It's this greatest show of love because He knows where we would be heading. He knows. And He knows how to stop us because the heart, how much more the hearts of the sons of men, that is closer to Him than that of hell and destruction, that's for sure. And that's why He sent His Son to die for us. That is, His love is shown on the cross because sin demands punishment. Sin demands justice, which demands death and hell. It's as simple as that. It's as straightforward as that. Therefore, to stop that, we have the Christ who came to this earth for us. And Proverbs 15 and verse 24, the way of life winds upward for the wise, that he may turn away from hell below. The way of life is given by God. It's not given by anybody else. I am the way, the truth, the life. All right? He is giving us everything we need. And it's a matter of taking it. Now, so that we make, for anyone just happened to coming across this class and haven't seen anything else prior to this, anyone can become one of the wise. Anybody can. Anybody also can become one of the fools and be lost. Anybody can. That includes someone as wise as Solomon. Hence, we have the example of Solomon given to us. Even he. And that anyone can be saved and anyone can be lost. It's a matter of your will. That's it. Nothing else. There's nothing unjust about God. He did not create you to sin. He didn't create you to be lost for eternity. He didn't create you so that He can be cruel to you. He didn't do that at all. He created us to serve Him and to test us here on this earth if we will be faithful to Him. All right, and every one of us proves it every day. Every one of us proves it every day. And we just read verse 11 again. Hell and destruction are before the Lord. So how much more the hearts of the sons of men. The eyes of the Lord are in every place. That's 15 and verse 3. Christ died for us because hell and destruction are before the Lord. That's why it was done. Because that hell and destruction are a certainty. You going there, well, you can make it certain if you want to, but you don't have to make that a certainty. You can turn to the one who keeps our hearts close, the one who wants us to be saved and not go there. That is reserved, hell is reserved for Satan and his angels. If you want to join them, you can, but it's an extremely bad idea. And we have run out of time, so we'll continue next week with this chapter. And thank everybody for being with us.